There was now a debate when I was running for office that they should eliminate grades, eliminate the idea of competition, eliminate the idea because that puts the person that's getting worse grades in a bad position and he gets sad. I'm not a supporter of that way of thinking. Do you want to risk it all? Be an entrepreneur. Cost of living is very high in Denmark. Of my friends, I don't know anyone who's gotten funding in Denmark. They all go to the US because they really like the American way of VCs believing in a startup when it's not even really showing complete traction yet.
So are you the youngest politician in Denmark?
I'm probably, one of the youngest person in Denmark elected.
Who else is rivaling you? Who is this person?
Well, so I'm the first deputy. I'm the youngest in my political party, and I'm the youngest to hold my position as the first deputy to the Danish Parliament. And we actually had debates when I was running for Parliament with the oldest in office, so he was like around 80, and me as the youngest. So it's probably one of the first times you have such young politicians.
Did the debates get personal? Without getting into details, did the debates get personal?
They did get personal, and ended up actually, we didn't talk politics. We spoke about, this whole mentality and the stamina you need to be in politics. And he was extremely supportive. And he was like, "You're on for a ride." So,
So when you beat him, he was supportive.
Yeah, he was. I mean, it was a debate where it was more like just, he was leaving the office and he was very happy to see that there are young people, especially women as well, stepping in, because you have to have, of course, a very strong emotional kind of stability, because with all the things you encounter, if you're a bit sensitive, you can, of course, get pulled off. So there's a lot of good advice he got, he brought, but it was funny to see the age gap and to see he was like, when he was in office, there was no women, there were barely any young people, and now I was 26 when I ran for Parliament, and I was 25, actually 24 when I ran for regional government, and I turned 25 on election day. So one of the youngest, and probably the youngest in the country, I think, holding my position at the moment.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So just to backtrack a little bit, did you know that you wanted to be in government when you were a kid? Is this something that you always had an ambition for?
It's hard to say, because when you're a kid, you don't really know, but you have like a burn, right, to do something. I studied political science in London. So I guess already in my 20s, I realized this is something I wanted to learn about. At a young age, I was an ambassador for Denmark, and I actually went to, at the time, to these children camps, I led expeditions. I met presidents. I was in Crimea. I was in Holland, actually, as a kid, and in all these different countries. And I just loved the idea of gathering like young people, being a bit of a leader, but at the same time doing some projects. So we were kids, but we were doing I was at this festival, Change the World for the Better, and I love the idea of the fact that you can actually do something, have an impact, and you can, gather a group of people, bring an idea, put it on paper, and bring it to the big people who actually make decisions, and they can listen. So I love that idea, and Denmark is a quite, I think, open-minded democratic country in the sense that you can have your voice heard, and young people are highly respected as well. So I think I had that mentality. But I first studied business because I think it's a macroeconomic world we live in, so we have to see what's going on. But then I decided to study politics, and at the same time I did internships in the banking industry and like in Bloomberg. I tried to kind of gain what moves the world. And I think I wouldn't say I knew that I wanted to be in government, because for me it's more about actually being able to make a change, be part of influencing a project. I have my own worldviews that, of course, I think are the right ones, but we're all subjective and biased. But for me, it's not only through government you can make a change. You have business people that are much more influential than any MP. So for me, it's hard to answer the question, but I think I always knew that I wanted to do something that would move opinions.
You were born in Denmark.
Born and raised in Denmark. My family traveled a lot, so I would travel with them, but I always lived in Denmark. So I still got brought up in this kind of very equal, minimalistic way of thinking society, if that makes sense. In Denmark, we have this law called Janteloven, so it's like a social law that we are all equal.
In the case of that law, what does equality mean? How is that defined?
It's like a social law, like an unwritten social law, which means that no one is better than you in a way. We're all equal. And of course, there are people that are better in other things than others, But there's also a drawback to the law because it's completely opposite to kind of the American meritocratic way of doing things in Denmark. We're all equal. You shouldn't. In debates in Denmark, there was now a debate when I was running for office that they should eliminate grades. Eliminate the idea of competition, eliminate the idea because that puts the person that's getting worse grades in a bad position and he gets sad. I'm not a supporter of that way of thinking. But the idea of equality on the good side is that I can easily be talking to politicians that are very senior. I mean, before I got elected, I could be talking to politicians. I would be meeting the prime minister on the streets and he would be talking to me with respect, like the prime minister bikes. They have a simple car. It's like the idea is we're all equal. Don't think you're better than someone else just because you have a position.
You're not above someone else is basically the essence of that social contract.
Exactly.
It sounds like you always knew you wanted to have influence and be able to make positive change. Do you remember the first kind of thing that you may have done as a child to affect change in your community and your family? Do you remember these moments?
It was a small thing and I didn't make a big change, but I was 12 years old and I ended up being in a position of leading an expedition in Finland of this youth festival. We gathered a group of young people and we were in the forest and we had to, do these little puzzles, go through the forest. They ended up being a little bit of a culture/national clash because there were people from different countries. And we had people from, at the time, also Armenia, Azerbaijan. And there was this big clash of kids, like basically getting angry at each other because of the nationalism they had been imposed by their parents. And I remember I was only 12 or 13 at the time. And that's where my kind of diplomacy skills kicked in. And I kind of resolved this conflict in the middle of the forest, which was almost scary because they were really angry at each other and this like racism. And I realized it's so stupid for kids and for just people in general to be fighting over what their governments did in the past, because we're all different people and we can all make our own path today. I got a bit emotional as well. And I remember I kind of resolved this conflict by being the leader and did this like diplomatic like little debate where we all had to talk about, I like set it up, like why we felt the way we did. I mean, it's more like a psychologist than a diplomat, but I remember feeling that, you know what, actually so many conflicts happen because of stupid things amongst people. But that was my first encounter with I actually enjoyed resolving conflicts on a small scale.
Is what you cared about as a kid the things you were most passionate about? Has that changed or evolved dramatically? Or do you feel like that young person would still be someone who you connect with in that way today?
Definitely. I think it's the young person and the kid that drives me in a lot of these things, because in order to do the things that I do at the moment, like you're driven by something beyond, right? It's obviously not a materialistic kind of drive. And it's not really, I mean, yeah, you like the status, but for me, there's this inner energy someone has, whatever they do, right? You got to love what you do. And of course, I think it's the kid in me that drives me forward when I started running for office, and there was a lot of positivity encountered with it. But at the same time, it was really difficult. I mean, just running for parliament, you stand on the streets every day from 7 a.m. I'm quite shy by nature, and I had to like give out flyers with my face on it, be like, I'm passionate about, recycling the garbage, and these are my, like, I want to empower the small individual, and like consider voting for me and all these things. And you represent your political party as well. And I had moments where, I was soaked in rain, standing for 10 hours every day on the streets, and people would I remember this guy walking past me, and it was like the end of the election days. So I think it was like the 28th day, and I had been every day on the streets, and he walks past me, and I'm like, giving him a flyer and a little candy, hoping he'll take it. And he's like, I'd rather break my arm than take your flyer. And you have to continue smiling and be like, thank you, have a nice day, and not cry, right? And these things are, you really got to be motivated. That's my point, in order to go through all of those things.
Unlike you, I ran a failed political race as a city council member in where I live. And I had dogs attack me when I was knocking on doors,
Really?
and some pretty ugly people in the world that aren't very sympathetic to what kind of effort you put out there in these kinds of situations, and don't think, what has this person been through to get to my door? And it's kind of understandable because they haven't been through it, so it's hard for them to understand. But it's hard work.
It is, and politicians in general are, of course, they don't have a positive image because, and I know I've met some politicians and I don't look up to them at all, and the way they live, and there's a lot of not great things about them. But Denmark is actually it's a very democratic country. Politicians don't make much either. So we had politicians, like we had this famous entrepreneur go into politics, and he got a lot of votes. He got in, and then he left, and he was even a minister at the time. And they're like, how could he leave? And he was like, there was so much headache. I mean, you're obviously not there for the materialistic reasons, and he couldn't push forward the change he wanted. So he stayed in the party, but as kind of in the back. To do all these things, like especially in my case, I did my whole election by myself. I got support from my party, and I had some great friends and volunteers, but I did everything myself, like every single thing, from the flyer, the text, all the Instagram, the content.
So you still have the first flyer, the one with your face on it?
I do. Yes.
Can you send me a picture?
Yeah, I have from the regional government the flyers, and then we had these like brochures for the parliament, and the placards. Like we have these big physical placards, and you put them yourself on the trees and on the lamps. And I literally like begged my friends to help me, and we were like spent several days. Like my mother was helping me. We're like going into these like big trees and climbing. Like I almost fell once to put them on. It's a very actually like it's a lot of effort. I mean, that's just a physical effort. Of course, the biggest is the mental, but you put a lot into it. But what you gain out of it, at least in my case, was so positive because I have very interactive followers, very interactive voters. I had people calling me a lot during elections. I remember on election day, I had this mother calling me with a crying baby. And she's like, hello, are you Alexandra? And I'm like, yes, I am. And I was like on the way to the Parliament because that was where the election night was going on. And she was like, yeah, so I'm considering to vote for you. You don't know me. And then the baby's like crying. It's like, wah, wah. And she's like, oh, my baby's crying. But what are you going to do about the maternity leave? And she's like, I'm about to go to to vote for you, but I'm not sure. And then I said what I thought about maternity leave. And she's like, okay, great. Yeah, I want that. Okay, I'm going to vote for you. Yeah. And then I had people call me from the booth, just like, I'm about to put a cross for you and this person. Give me a quick pitch. Like, what are you going to do about like the recycling or something like that, or the tax? And yeah, but so I was a bit shocked that people really just call you. I mean,
I'm going to hypergeneralize here, but it sounds like Denmark might have a healthier democracy.
Yeah, almost too healthy at times.
A little bit too involved.
Yeah.
They show up at your house. Like, hey, what do you think about that? You're like, this is where I live.
I had some stalkers as well, which got a bit uncomfortable. Yeah. But they're very sweet and nice, but they literally would Google my address to show up and be like, we want to help. And
yeah, we interviewed someone here a couple of days ago who was in the Harry Potter franchise, and he has to deal with a little bit of that too. And he has to thread the needle too, because these aren't necessarily evil people, but they're just something goes a little bit off.
Yeah, it is. And in Denmark, you need volunteers. So I had a lot of volunteers helping me that I don't know. And often these were male, a bit like plus, I don't know, 35, 40, some young kids as well. But they couldn't even vote. It was like a really weird age gap of volunteers I had. But you need help.
40-year-old volunteers?
Yeah, and they message every day. And they're like, we are so proud to know you. Can I do anything?
And you're unsure if they're coming for the mission or for the other stuff.
In the beginning, I thought it was for the mission or help a young politician. It's a lot of effort and there's not many.
And then you turn them down from going on a date and then they disappear.
And then he messaged me a few days ago and he's like, oh, can I help you with more stuff? And I'm like, well, I'm not running for office at the moment. But thank you so much for your kindness. And then he writes like, do you want to go swim on the beach? I like to swim naked. And I was like, okay. That's where it gets uncomfortable. I mean, there's only a few of those cases, but still.
That's really interesting, though. Your family was super helpful. Your friends were super helpful. When you first obviously they supported you because they love you, but when you first told them what you wanted to do this, how did they respond? What was their reaction?
Well, I actually got asked to run, so I got invited into politics, you can say. It wasn't that I said I want to run. I got asked first. Before I ran, I got asked to run for regional government in Copenhagen.
Who asked you?
I had been before. I was always in politics. I was always in my political party. It's a Liberal Party from the age of like 16, 15. And I was always a bit involved in liking to go to to election nights. I was honored to be invited to election nights with the Prime Minister. And I would go to these things, learn, help. My friend's brother was running for European Parliament. I helped him. So I was always a bit like getting the exposure, liking to help my friends that were in politics. And then I became a bit involved with behavioral data and AI. I found that very interesting. So I traveled to conferences and I learned a lot about how behavioral data had been used in political elections. So I actually went to US and went to this conference where they spoke about how, like in Trump's elections, was it a misuse of data or how did they use their data to get the elections he got? So I got a lot of like insights and learned a little bit about how that works. And I got invited to be an advisor in Copenhagen regional government. So advising on data, on social media, on how that whole world works for local governments. And it was just a volunteer thing.
So your friends and family were already aware that this may be your trajectory. So when you were asked, it wasn't a surprise to them, it sounds like.
It wasn't, no, it wasn't. But I was a bit like an advisor. And then I got asked the following year to run for Copenhagen, and I declined because I was like, I don't want my face on the trees and local governance. That's only going to be about like expanding the street or not. I didn't think the issues would be interesting or what I could like add to. But then I realized actually it's much more than that. And then when I got asked the following year to run in my local council, so in Copenhagen, but a different region, it's one of the most sustainable cities, and it's also, they have a good budget. They invest a lot into the youth, into entrepreneurship. Then I decided to say yes, and I was really scared. And I remember, like, I didn't even tell my mom actually till like I had signed everything and I decided, because I didn't want anyone to influence my decision.
Sure.
So I got asked, and I was very hesitant. And then both the mayor of the city at the time asked me, and this other deputy from my political party asked me. So it was like two different parties, two different MPs, or not. One of them was an MP, the other one was the mayor, asking me. And I was like, why me? Like, wow. And they were like, you're an entrepreneur. I run a fashion brand where I'm investing a lot into sustainability, recycling.
Do you still run the fashion brand?
I still do it. It's been paused a bit given all my activities in the political scene, but yes.
Is that hard to run a fashion brand while you're in politics? Because there's rules, right? I imagine you can't promote your fashion brand the same way that you would have outside of politics.
Yes, but it's like so different. A fashion brand is very different to politics.
Unless you wear the fashion while you're in the public eye.
Yeah, well, yeah, I wear my own jackets when I'm in the public eye sometimes.
That's allowed.
That's allowed, yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's been paused and it's like family run. So right now I don't do most of the activities.
But like you want me making a speech in the middle of the speech that's getting a high viewership. By the way, you should buy my brand. Yeah. And then back to the
but people
sustainability.
Actually, people love the idea that, I mean, I'm so young that in order to be of value for government, for local issues, I need to have a bag of some form of experience,
sure.
Right? My experience is that I've been running a fashion brand or business. I've been doing other things as well before that. And I've been digging a lot into recycling, textiles, technologies, how just to start a business, all these things. And that's why one of my topics as well that I was very passionate about is entrepreneurship. Like I have a co-working space in my council. So I did a lot of this meeting entrepreneurs, because in Denmark, it's a bit of a issue. You know, there's a lot of people starting a company, very few making, kind of growing. And then when they grow, they leave. Like yesterday, I had a meeting with the founder of the biggest digital bank in the Nordics. And we were talking about this issue. And he's like, yeah, I'm the only, at the moment, bank in Denmark almost. Everyone leaves because of
taxes.
Well, taxes, bureaucracy, all these things. So,
I mean, not to get too much into the details of policy with taxes, but it sounds like when the tax rates go up, that's probably encouraging for successful leaders in the business space to leave. And I think that maybe people who are forced higher taxes for some reason are ignoring those second, third order consequences, and not really understanding the kind of damage that can inflict upon a society unless you get that under control.
Definitely. But that is one of the main reasons. But speaking to big founders, they say actually it's not even tax that is the biggest. Yeah, they say there's two things, and I would agree with them. First, it's kind of the bureaucratic admin of kicking it off. So in the beginning, you kind of drown in all these like papers, and you don't want to make a mistake. So there's a lot of admin involved, which is with tax and VAT and all those things. But actually, the second thing is the mentality. So the founder I was talking to, he was saying that, the mentality is a big thing. I've encountered myself. Danish people entrepreneurs are actually so nice and open-minded, but for some reason, it's a bit harder to collaborate. Like I'm a big promoter of collaborations because I grew my business. It's small, but I'm still growing through collaboration. So you give me, let's say, the office space or the store, and we give you the traffic and the people, or you give us the textiles and we invest into the recycling part of it, or something like this, like collaborations, right? When you're a small business. In Denmark, I find that quite difficult. Whilst I've been traveling a lot to the UK, to France, to other countries where this whole collaborative idea of growing a business is much more open-minded and easier. Like people intro you to other people. There's a lot of like in conference people talk. Whilst in Denmark, it's a little bit more closed off. It's and I think that's an opportunity we're missing out. So I'm actually in the committee right now for entrepreneurship in my council and in the business council. And we're working on thinking of opening this hub. Like we want to do like a mini Silicon Valley in the council because we have this beautiful space, which was an old hospital. And we're thinking, how can we implement like the collaboration between also the big guys? We have Carlsberg, we have Lego, we have all those, and the small guys, because I think that's what's lacking a lot.
Right. The proper mentorships and infrastructure. It sounds like you've thought a lot about this. Have you identified any factors that would lead to the Danish culture being, he didn't say anti-entrepreneurial, but just not quite as pro-entrepreneurial as you'd like Denmark to be?
It's a very good question, because that's something we are all always analyzing. What is the factor? Because as I said, there's a lot of people that open up a company, but there's not many that scale it. One of the factors is the collaborative aspect, being able to give a
culturally,
bit.
I mean, yeah, because you talked about the bureaucratic and sort of.
Yeah, so being able to give a bit, not always knowing, like I love communities, like the idea that we help each other. I think that's a factor. Second factor is maybe it's also, there's great jobs, there's a good stability of having a salary, a job, unemployment is not that high. So the kind of idea of, do you want to risk it all? Be an entrepreneur. Cost of living is very high in Denmark. So, I mean, I had to do jobs on the side whilst even starting my own business. Like when I started running for office, I was working at a factory. We were doing sustainable packaging that was basically supposed to be biodegradable for Coca-Cola and all those big brands. And I was working at a factory at the same time, running for office, at the same time running my startup. I mean, you have to, connect.
Right. So you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there might be a safety net that sort of puts out the fire that lights under when there's a certain level of desperation or hunger. When things are going so well, people don't really have the chance to develop that hunger.
Exactly. And it's not really promoted much in schools or in universities. But there are still a lot of Danish people that kind of do it. And there's great companies, great startups.
Where do most people go when they leave?
Good question. I think companies go to the US because access to funding. There's good funding in Denmark, but of my friends, I don't know anyone who's gotten funding in Denmark. They all go to the US because they really like the American way of VCs believing in a startup when it's not even really showing complete traction yet. So I think the US is kind of number one. Probably UK as well, because they like the American way of kind of investing. That's what I've also heard around the world, that VCs, American VCs, they don't always need to have complete traction, all the dots connected. They kind of can invest into the idea stage, pre-seed stage easier than other VCs.
There's a dark side to that too. There can be a little bit too much visionary sort of impetus behind that. But I can see how that could be very attractive to good business people.
Yeah, because I know that, for example, I have friends as well. Like, for example, the French way of investing is like very conservative way of investing, whilst the American is a bit more, as you said, visionary. And I think a lot of the entrepreneurs in Denmark that I've seen, they're quite visionary. We have, for example, one that started, I like this company, it's a good to go. It's like all the waste all the products that are about to expire in stores get sold for very cheap in big like baskets, and people love it. They can come and buy, so there's no waste. So companies working on eliminating waste, companies working on kind of the sharing economy, all these more sustainable visionary companies that might not be extremely profitable year one, year two, but Danes also like to support those companies, definitely. But I think US is a spot where lots go. UK, of course, because of universities. I studied in the UK myself. I studied in Copenhagen Business School, and then I went to the UK because I wanted the exposure. I wanted to kind of experience banking / all these companies in the UK. But then I was, of course, happy to return back to Denmark with my kind of also worldview of some things.
Yeah. Your story is unique because of your age, obviously, but also you've accomplished a lot before you even ran for office. You did a lot. How do you remain generally normal, and how do you enjoy your life as a young person while you're doing all these things? And do you enjoy your life? Is it something that you get to do?
I'm depressed and sad. No, I do enjoy my life. But yeah, I was actually, when I had the meeting with the founder yesterday, who's extremely busy, he's like, "Do you have more hours in your day than I have in mine?"
But are you dating? Not your stalkers, but like, are you dating? And how does that work when you're in the public eye in your country and you're so big? Like, it just seems tough.
There's tough moments, but in terms of the public eye, I was a lot in the public eye when elections were happening. So I'm, of course, a new face, and people knew me regionally. But when I ran for parliament, people didn't think that I do so well. I didn't think that myself. Everybody was really shocked because I outcompeted 2 members of parliament at the time. And they were always on TV, radio. They had really big budgets. And then it was me with barely any campaign budget. I was the last one to run. So I was the last one to declare my kind of that I'm running for office. I did it a week before election started, which has never, I think, happened before.
Do you have any funny? I love the story of the woman calling you while she's trying to figure out whether or not she wants to vote for you. It's amazing you got your number. Do you have any funny stories since you've gotten into office of people approaching you like that in those kinds of interactions?
Now it's faded a bit out, but after elections, of course, people recognize you because you've been hanging everywhere on the trees, on the lamps, and in the whole capital and outer capital, kind of. It's called the regional Copenhagen. And you just get awkward stares, people look at you and then they're like, "Where have I seen you?" Because people they recognize you if they've seen you a lot on TV, but seeing you like on their tree, it's like they feel they really know you, but like they don't get where from. And I get like those stares I would get a lot. And I remember
like the squirrel,
yeah.
Alexandra.
It's like, I know you're from somewhere really, like you feel so familiar and close, but like you're not like famous, but you feel so familiar. And of course I was hanging, like people, not backyards, but basically trees. And I also had for local governments, I had buses. I had 2 buses with my face on it.
Wow.
So I remember one fun was when I walked into the bus where my face was on it, and it was like a big face, and it was a bit like widespread, my face. I looked a bit more square because it's like it was a long bus, and I was on the one side, and the MP at the time, he's still an MP, he's a famous MP, he was on the other one, and his slogan was experience, and I was renewal. So I was like, that was my slogan. I'm the renewal to the party and to the government.
Oh, that's great.
And he's the experience, because I can't beat experience, but I have the renewal part. And I remember walking into the bus and people were like, just like, in their world. And they're like, looking at me and they're like, we feel we've just seen you.
Yeah, wider face version.
Yeah, but like, where have we just seen you? And that was kind of, during elections, you got those stares all the time. But I had some fans that was like young kids. Like when I say young kids, they're like probably 13, 14, 15. And I had as well a store with my face on it, which was like electorate store. And my mom was standing outside. And these guys were walking. I think they were 13, 14. And they were walking and they're like, "Oh my God, that's her. Like for my picture, like the store.
You should go open for rock stars, yeah. It sounds like, or for Taylor Swift or something.
It's a minority, right? But still, it's like, that's her. And my mom was standing outside and she's like, she's actually inside. And they're like, "No way, no.
Did you sign autographs?
Yeah, I did sign autograph. But like, "Can we walk inside?" And she's like, "Yeah, you could go in." It was after elections had just happened. I had had no sleep, no makeup. I was like so tired sitting there. And these kids walk in. And we had free drinks. We had a beer thing as well. And they walk in and I'm like, "Oh, hi." And they're like, "Hey." And they're like, "We want to hear about your policies." And they're like 13. And I'm like, "Do you guys want some candy?" And they're like, "No, we want to vote for you." Or like, "We voted for you." And I'm like, "How old are you?" And they're like, "We're like to be 18." And I think they were like 13, literally. That's 14.
Adorable.
And they were like 12 boys. And the next day they created this like fan page, Alexandra fan page, and they screenshot all my like photos and wrote like babe and like best politician in the world and like all these things. And they wrote like made like selfies with the store, and they were like, we know her, you know, like yo. And I found that so cute and funny.
It's also probably plays perfectly with what they were trying to peg you as, which is the renewal, right?
Yeah.
So basically you're getting young kids involved in politics.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this attractive young politician is going to make all these young boys interested in policy.
Yeah.
Like that's really, I mean, as maybe the entire thing is a little bit strange to think about sometimes, but that's also so positive ultimately, and has such profoundly positive consequences.
It is, because in today's world, there's so much news, there's so much fast pace. So the biggest point is actually getting someone's attention and being able to pass on the message, right? Unfortunately, some populist politicians sometimes get popularity because they say one statement, and people are like, oh, we like that statement, and they just vote for him, but they don't realize all the other things he's pushing forward. So when you have, and young kids, they barely, I mean, some are engaged, but not many are engaged, right? I'm able to just engage their interest in politics. Doesn't mean that they're going to like what I say, but at least get them, you know, engaged in it. And they engage their parents as well. Like I had a lot of, I mean, now I'm talking about the young boys, but I had a lot of young girls, like really young girls. And they for some reason thought I looked like Rapunzel or like this princess on my placard, because I have a bit like this, and I was hanging.
Long flowing hair that people are climbing up.
Yeah, I had a bit longer hair before, but I don't know, they just liked how I was looking. And I was doing a lot of debates in primary schools. And often politicians, they don't want to waste their time on debates where they won't get voters, right? Because you only have 30 days and you want to go to the debates where people can vote. Genius,
though, because you'd reach them. You'd reach their parents.
Exactly. But I didn't think it like that. I was just happy to get the opportunity for experience. I mean, my first debate was, you know, I was nervous. I was debating with, I remember the mayor, like the current mayor now. And I was so nervous debating with him. And when I debate, like I get into my mode and I disagree. So I was like calling him off, and I was like,
aren't you part Jewish? A little bit. Like, I don't know if you're Jewish, but didn't you mention at some point that you're?
Is that when you think when I said I'm like putting
into
them
debating, into arguing,
debating,
you know,
into
like
putting them on the
Danish
spot.
people are probably more about, hey, like chill out.
They're a bit more calm, but people get heated in debates. But
yeah.
I remember calling him off, and I realized, oh my God, I just called off like the mayor. I was like, and I called him off. I was like, you know what you just said is completely incorrect. And I knew that it was incorrect. And I was like, can you give me some facts, like backing up your argument? And they were like, oh no, I just did that. Oh no. God. And then he shook my hand afterwards. He was like, well done. So yeah.
Touche.
Yeah.
You beat me.
But I did all these primary school debates, of course, for experience. And the kids, there's a lot of young kids that came up to me afterwards asking me some questions. And I was giving them my leaflets, and I had a few, but I gave them all to the kids. And then I met the parents afterwards on the streets, and they were like, you know what? My kid came up to me and was like, this girl was so cool, and she spoke to me, and I read your flyer, and I looked you up online, and I really like you. So now my whole family is going to vote for you, because I trust my kid more than I trust any politician, on TV. And I like your standpoints, what you stand for, like on my leaflets. So I think I got a lot of votes.
That's epic.
Through kids and the kind of untraditional way. So I think if you do what you love and you kind of believe in your cause, sometimes because I didn't think in a salesy marketing way, I didn't think I need to stand where I will get most votes and do the debates where I get most exposure. I did the kind of untraditional way, and I was never on TV. I did a lot of radio though, but never TV. And I got votes in I think half of the parliament.
That's incredible. So you mentioned earlier, and obviously there's exceptions to this rule, but a lot of people who are attracted to becoming politicians are attracted because of probably serious personality flaws and character flaws, especially ones that remain in it for life, right? Although those people, there's some good people that choose to do that as well. Do you think this is your career? Like, is this what you're going to do for the next 40 years?
I don't know. I take day by day, because the world changes, and I wouldn't say I change. My drive doesn't change. But as I said, for me, it's about being able to push forward the kind of causes I believe in, make an impact. And I'm a big believer in empowering the smaller individual. I think I'm an example of how a small individual can be empowered by work by other individuals. But I also bridge the link between businesses and kind of government, or try to. I'm also in the private sector, and I want to support and get supported by entrepreneurs. We have all these big companies, and yeah, they're doing great. But I mean, what about all the small guys? And it doesn't need to be an entrepreneur. It can also be just the smaller individual that gets, is able to do stuff. Now there's a lot in today's world about diversity, empowerment, and almost in a very ideological way. But of course, I love the idea of the female being able to, also a young female, being able to have a form of power, be in government, be heard on different topics, and be respected. And I feel completely respected and heard in what I do.
And by the way, without having to sacrifice, I mean, of course you sacrifice a lot, but without having to sacrifice everything.
Yeah.
So you still get to go with your friends to go out. You go to fun resorts. No, it's less and less.
My friend yesterday was like, when did you last time go to a club? I'm like, But it's nothing to do with the fact that I am in politics or I run. But of course, my hours are limited, and I love talking to interesting people. Like, I can be and having a drink with cool people and socializing. For me, it's about learning, right? I want to call myself like a sponge that's learning from interesting people, because for me to bring value to government, to a company, or to be listened to, I need to, of course, have something I can bring of interesting things. And the best way is to learn from others, I think.
You travel a lot. You've traveled a lot throughout your life. So you have a unique ability to probably assess Denmark from both the inside and the outside.
Yeah.
Is there anything eccentric or interesting you think that people outside of Denmark might find like quirky or just something that...
About Denmark?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot. I think Danes are very unique. Very unique. They're not like Swedish people, Norwegians. I mean, they have a whole unique way of living. They really cherish this thing called coziness, which is called hygge in Denmark. They are very minimalistic. Like, they can make something cozy out of the most simple things, like a candlelight. Like, I mean, I put a candle every night. It's like a tradition. I thought everybody does that, but no, they don't. But like, very cozy way of living and being able to enjoy things with very simple stuff. They bike bicycles. They don't spend, I think, too much money, I would say. They're quite... My friends abroad, they love to go out, spend. Danes, they're like, no, let's make a little picnic and like buy some vegetables we'll cut up in the park, let's bike there. No one really... I mean, they're very, minimalistic.
So that's different than Sweden and Norway, you were saying?
I would say so, yeah.
Because a lot of what you just said overlaps. My wife's Dutch, and so with the Netherlands, right? And so their word is for coziness is gezellig.
How do you say that?
I say it like a Jewish person. Gezellig. I don't say it with the right accent.
Gezellig. Okay, it's hygge in Danish.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Gezellig.
I'm saying it like it's Hebrew, but it's not. It's Dutch. It's like super gezellig. They love like candlelight stuff, and that's as simple to going to the parks, doing literally with the bike. It's like a huge biking culture. Maybe there's
we're probably more similar to Dutch people.
Interesting. Yeah, there's probably like somewhat of a crossover there.
So I think that is a big thing, and
they don't like outrageous, loud, ostentatious sort of overtures.
Yeah, they don't like that. But Danes are so different. Like Danes, there's kind of the people that also are well traveled. So some Danes really love to backpack, travel, see the world, be very open minded. But then of course you have the closed minded kind of box people a little bit, I would say. But that's in every country, right?
Yeah.
And I have some friends that get annoyed by my spontaneous way of living, that I can like jump on a plane, or I'll be like, let's meet up in an hour. They're
like you're too spontaneous for
they're like
the Danish.
An hour? Like, no, let's meet next week at like 3 p.m.
I find that to be the case with the Dutch too. If we try to see our friends there, our family there, it's literally 3 weeks from now, a set dinner. It's like, well, what about tonight? Yeah. And they're like, tonight? Like, that's just in a few hours. What are you talking? We have to... Yeah. In America, at least, because in my Mexican family especially, you just kind of show up places, and you just uninvited, and it's completely fine.
Exactly. So maybe that's a Nordic thing as well. But I remember it was last year, it was May, and my friend messages me, he's like, we're organizing a trip of friends to a summer house. We want to rent the summer house in August.
Of 2030. This August, right? I'm just kidding.
Honestly, it was like... I keep on telling the story because I was so shocked, and then but basically he's it's my friend. He's actually quite like, he travels quite a bit. He plays tennis, but
tennis is exciting. And
but he messages me and he's very eager. He's like, can you confirm, because we need to put the payment in. And I'm like, this is really cool, but it's a bit far ahead for me to organize my August. Like, it's May. And he's like, it's like the 10th of August or something. And I'm like, can I tell you like in July? Because I honestly don't know where I'll be. And he's like, but we got to confirm now. And then I'm like, okay, thinking. And then I go on the link. I'm like, you sent me the wrong link. This is for the following year. Like, this is for, so we're 2023. So it's for this year. He asked me last year, right, about this. And I'm like, you sent me the wrong link. This is for 23. He's like, no, it's for a year and a half. Like, and I was like,
my joke was on point.
I was like, are you for real? And he was like, yeah, I mean, these summer houses get booked up. Like, I mean, this is obviously for,
Jeez.
And I was like so shocked. I called my mom, like, Mom, is something wrong with me? Like, I don't get this. And she was like, wow, that's next level. But
that is next level. That's insane.
Yeah. And we haven't spoken since, actually. I think that's why we realized we're so different in our way of, like, we would
You should schedule a call with him for like a year from now. I'm sure that'll.
But we would organize like a week in advance, like a walk in a park, and we're neighbors. I mean, he is busy, but I mean,
that might be one of the cultural factors we didn't touch upon earlier, is the lack of spontaneity leads to a less entrepreneurial friendly environment.
Maybe, yes. I wouldn't say it's not, it is a very friendly environment, but you're right. The kind of, just as like Richard Branson, just like, screw it, just do it. You just got to do it, right? You got to, and sometimes it's not within the time schedule. It's not planned. You just got to kind of, do
Make
that meeting, make that call. I have some friends, Danish people, that are extremely proactive, and they're like, they just kind of break that social norm. They do the calls. Like, I had a friend helping me for elections, and I get quite nervous, especially when it comes to people that I know are busy. I value their time, and I'm very nervous about, I need to schedule a call. I don't like to just call. And I get annoyed when people just call me out of the blue, like, in the daytime, because I can be in meetings. But that is something that, you got to be able to do and embrace, I think, in the entrepreneurial environment as well. So definitely spontaneous, being spontaneous. God, I couldn't pronounce that.
Yeah, being spontaneous.
Yeah.
I mean, English is your second language?
It is. My first is Danish.
I assume, because you're...
Yeah. But I always went to international schools. So in Denmark, I went to a school where English language was there from first grade. And we did, like, most of our teachers were British. And then I did the IB, which is completely English education, international baccalaureate. I had Danish language on my high level, but I would say I'm bilingual.
Yeah.
In the sense, like,
you're fluent, yeah.
But of course, Danish is my first language.
Are there any books that had a huge influence on you, either as a young person or even a child?
I get often asked, like, do you have a book? Or do you have a role model? And I feel really bad for saying it, but I don't have like a book, or I actually find it difficult to finish a book. I don't know what trait that is about me.
Is it because of social media?
Well, before social media, I have this tendency I love extraction. Maybe because I was a political student and we read a lot of extracts. So we would never read like the whole book. And
Not even Harry Potter?
It's so bad. I didn't read Harry Potter.
Oof.
And I watched one Harry Potter movie only. I'm one of those
books
people.
Are very, the story is amazing.
I love reading extracts. I read a lot in general. And I was not always the most keen student. Like, I was a keen student. I studied a lot, but I got very high grades. Like, I got the highest average in high school and in university. I'm a first class student.
You never came across a work of fiction that emotionally, you were always kind of interested in the nonfiction.
Yeah, I was in the nonfiction, and I would love to read kind of bullet points. I don't know how to say it. I don't like fluffy stuff,
That certainly explains why you're 27 and in Parliament then.
Yeah, I love like kind of getting to the point, because there's so much information out there. There's so much knowledge. And the hardest thing is actually gathering that kind of knowledge and being able to dissect. So something I think I learned a lot being a political student, where you get these like theory books and extracts. I think my university, UCL at the time, was really good because we had these very enthusiastic professors that would literally print out the best parts from every book to us and be like, read, and we would read it all, and it was interesting and it was right what we needed. So I'm never like, I've never been too good with like reading a whole book.
You have to put a lot of trust in the person creating the extracts, though. If you're
but I love biographies. I love hearing podcasts and hearing the person real. Some you can't, but of course, you know, the big kind of leaders and entrepreneurs, I like that. But I get, as I said, a lot of knowledge about going into these deep talks with different entrepreneurs. Not all of them are famous, but they run big companies, and I'm very lucky to be in these networks where I can have a coffee or a drink and actually go into topics with them.
Real life things. I think that that's a really cool answer for a couple of reasons. Mainly, in America, you'd never get an answer like that from a politician because the politician would have been trained to bullshit. And if they felt the way you did, they would find a book to be their inspiration or their passion for the purpose of the narrative. And I don't know if they also do that in Denmark or if you're unique amongst Danish politicians, but it's certainly interesting.
Yeah. But I think you got to read books. Like I'm reading Why Nation Fails, like all those, like I love about different theorists and their idea and worldview on nations. And I've read Homo Sapiens. I like kind of seeing the different view that these people have, and they're very interesting. But
have you read the John Adams biography?
No.
I highly recommend that. I feel like you'd appreciate maybe. Well, I'm American, so maybe I'm a little bit biased.
But I love like biographies, and I should read more. I read
Obstacles Away.
Obstacles Away, yeah, something like that. And there was interesting because they would have small references to
Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics and all that fun stuff.
Exactly. And that was interesting to see, history does repeat itself, and seeing what, how obstacles can be changed in your favor. And
is that Ryan Holiday? He lives in Bastrop near Austin. I host a basketball game every week, and a lot of our friends are interesting people in our community.
Oh, amazing.
And he got looped into 2 of our games.
Nice. I'd love to have a chat with him. He's one
really
of the
cool.
few books I've actually read.
He was really sweet and supportive of what my city council run, the way he talked to me and asked me and remembered, and like very, very good guy. He's very sincere. I think he's really impacted positively a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the book because it was like short, and it was like reference points to to history, which is interesting.
Well, Marcus Aurelius, have you read his book, Meditations?
No, only Obstacle is the Way.
You should check it. If you liked Obstacles Away, you should at some point check out the Marcus Aurelius book.
And now I'm reading, because I want to improve my French, I'm reading a biography about Elon Musk in French.
You speak French?
I do, but not great.
It's an American biography about Elon Musk that's been translated to French.
No, it's a French author who has a biography on Elon Musk, and it's a bit skeptical, which I like. It's not actually like, it's a bit like twisted.
Yeah, Europeans aren't quite as into
so it's like
the Elon Musk sort of
So I'm reading about SpaceX now in French. But it's like 2 in 1. It's like improving my French and reading about SpaceX.
It's just the French author being like smoking a cigarette. Just why aren't we just all having sex and chilling? Why do we need to go to to Mars or whatever?
It was a bestseller in Brussels airport, so I got it from a conference. I was like, you know what? I'm feeling, this kind of.
All right, let me know if you like it. Text me when you finish it to see. if it's
I brought it with me now to London as well, so I'm halfway through.
What about movies? I mean, if you're not into fiction for books, it's the same way with TV and movies? Do you stay away from that?
No, I actually really like movies, and I like cinematography. I studied, as my minor, I did cinematography, like cinema and innovation, and how movies and filmmaking influence societies. So I actually it was a bit random, but I did Soviet cinematography.
It's cool.
So I studied like how the first like black and white movie, like Larry Bauer in the kind of 1914.
Yeah.
And then how Soviet filmmaking kind of was completely different to the filmmaking that was done in the Tsarist era, and how the patriarchal society was, because you have these extreme movies where you show the woman killing the man and stepping over his body, like really extreme. This was like the Tsarist movie. And then you have the Soviet where the woman is like the equal worker. And with every Soviet leader, the filmmaking changed completely, not just on the agenda, but in the filmmaking, how it's filmed and
lighting and even set design and all that crazy stuff.
And I think that's so interesting because that's what we don't notice. Like people read the newspapers and they know one news agent has one view. Often it's like, right or left.
There's countless inputs that we're unaware of that are manipulating the way that we perceive the world.
And then filmmaking, like how it's filmed, the perspective, the angles, the lighting, how many characters in the movie is actually really influencing the society. And you enjoy it, right? You watch it as a pleasure and you don't think about how much it's influencing you. And I found that so interesting. So I was studying that, and I was actually a volunteer in a film festival in London for 2 years. And
this is completely running parallel to what you were saying about the book stuff too, because it's not that you love movies for the fictional elements of it or the stories.
Yeah,
you're again using the real world implications of what filmmaking mean. And did you study Nazi filmmaking and propaganda films?
No.
So no Goebbels.
No,
okay.
Studied only Soviet.
Interesting.
All the way from, and they weren't all propaganda. Some of them were very emotional movies about, different things. Like after the Soviet, there was this big theme on the loss of the father, because there was a lot of single mothers raising their children. And,
after the war, right?
Yeah, and the children, it was after the collapse of the Soviet Union. There was this... there was a bit of an anarchy, and I don't know why, but there was a big topic up to the 2000s. Were men
abandoning their families, or
men left the families? A lot of mothers.
There were a lot of mothers left to fend for themselves.
Exactly, and then kind of showing this childhood agenda. So I'm just saying there's like a lot of angles. Not all of it was like propaganda for the society, but in the Soviet Union it was censored, right? Whilst after the collapse, you had all these movies getting released that had been censored. Plus you had new filmmakers coming with all these like different topics. But no, I really enjoy filmmaking. Not filmmaking, I don't make films. I make Instagram videos, but I enjoy watching movies. And
that's actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's actually one of the last things I wanted to talk about. Although I hope we get to talk again and, keep tracking your career and stuff. In maybe next summer we can try to sit down again, is about social media.
Yeah.
And you do have an Instagram account. You post awesome pictures, pictures that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see from a politician.
Yeah.
And then, and you're also, because you're younger, you've been more exposed to that social media world than I think most other people in your world, in the political world. One, do you get pushback? Do you get in trouble for some of the things you post on social media?
Well, the truth, no. I do get a skepticism from people within the political world. Some think they're a bit like unorthodox in the sense of like I can post a photo with a glass of wine at a gathering. I can post some travels. I can post some conferences, statements, because when I ran, I kind of jumped into it. There wasn't any like preparation. And my Instagram became, public, and I didn't want to use my Instagram really, but it is a sense of who I am. I do travel. I am a girl that likes to go to conferences, eat some food. Of course, I don't post like pictures at home. I've changed it, and I can sometimes post like I'm on a holiday, I'm in a bikini, like I don't post bikini pictures really anymore, but it's me, right? I'm still who I am, and it's parts of my life.
You kept maybe something that is close to a bikini picture, but not the actual bikini picture, because now you're in a different position.
Yeah, it was my personal. So I have a political Facebook page, which is only things about
only pantsuits,
political beliefs. Yeah. Conferences, speeches, debates, articles when I have interviews, and my Facebook as well. Whilst my Instagram is like my personal, I'll have a lot of it's still most of my friends that are on my Instagram. But of course it became public, and I got like more followers with elections, and I got a lot of people messaging me on Instagram. In Denmark, as I said, my interaction was high with the voters. So I would get like 100 messages sometimes per day from people asking me about policies and things.
It sounds like there's a tension, but that you're really walking that line well, and that you're remaining grounded, which is really cool.
Yeah.
The second part of what I was going to ask you about is about what your general take is on the state of social media and how it's impacting younger people from TikTok to what's that ghost chap, Snapchat.
Yeah.
I'm like an old man. I'm like 36. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But like, how is this going to change everything? And is it for the worse?
Yeah, I'm actually not a supporter of it. I personally don't have Snapchat, and I've had it for like 6 months in 8th grade. I still remember. So I don't have Snapchat, and I don't have TikTok, and I don't have Twitter either, which isn't good. I should get Twitter, but I'm actually
X.
not.
It's called X now.
Yeah, the new.
It's no longer Twitter.
Maybe I'll be in Threads, but Threads is not allowed in the EU yet.
Oh, really?
Because of some data things.
So you have some concerns you're saying about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the data part, of TikTok, and I know Instagram as well. The data privacy aspect is, of course, quite gone. But your question was the influence in the youth. It's extremely addictive, right? I mean, social media is causing a lot of psychological problems. I don't know if you can directly say it is, but we do know that there's so many young kids who are having issues with, depression, anxiety, the idea of perfection. I mean, social media is a whole, it's not the real world, right? I mean, even my own social media, I look at it, I'm like, oh, wow, is that me?
You get FOMO looking at your own social media.
I don't post like a photo of me sitting like, looking bad with like a Snickers. Okay, I don't need Snickers, but you know what I mean? Like in my bathrobe with all my computer work and my to-do notes that is like 70% of the time. No, I post myself in a suit, looking nice, talking on a stage. I mean, I'm probably one of the only people that post a lot about my real life because I do a lot of stories, and often it's my daily life. But at the same time, we all know that it is, it's a prism, like it's a specific way, and I know a lot of young girls are affected by, especially these apps that change your body, that change your appearance. People are kind of chasing what is not real, and they think they compare themselves a lot to what they see on social media, and I think it's really damaging to a lot of young people. And the whole idea, I love the virtual world. I'm a big promoter of innovation and tech, but this whole virtual aspect I think is kind of going too far on young people, because my generation / a bit older are not that indulged, but I see like my mom's friends, they have like kids that are maybe 8, 7, they just sit on their iPads and they just scroll and scroll and scroll.
So sad.
And I've become a bit of an addict now to these reels because it optimizes to what you want to watch, and it's so interesting. But then I notice myself like 2 hours I spent on the reels, and
it's fake. It's often fake education.
Yeah,
like a YouTube reel or YouTube.
There's not really a proper censor. There's all these big statements. Like I watched this like one video about aliens, that like all politicians aliens as a joke, and now
you were like, am I an alien?
And now I get all these videos about Biden being an alien, and they're all aliens, and I'm like, oh my god, like I can at least filter, but imagine kids like just going into all these like
the conspiracy theory stuff is really scary. I think the influencer thing you were talking about earlier is really sad because what these people do is they create these images of what seem to be bubbly perfect lives, and then you kind of create this sort of faux role model that only a very, very small percentage of people can actually be like. And then if you try to be like that, you have no substance. And I'm not sure what value these influencers are adding to the world, but the ones who are successful make a lot of money, and they may even be hurting the world. And I'm uncomfortable by it for sure. Yeah. I feel uncomfortable about it for sure.
I think if you have become an influencer, then it is your obligation because you have so many people following you. It's your kind of duty to show the different sides of you.
How many followers do you have? You're in.
I don't have that many actually compared to the world, but compared to the Danish political scene, I have a lot.
So you're an influencer now?
I am an influencer in a way. I am, yes, definitely, because I don't know more than half of my followers, and I get a lot of also people that don't even follow me that watch my stories, and that's why I try to push good messages.
You should do some fun stories about filmmaking techniques.
Yeah,
in propaganda and try and maybe go into stuff that you can geek out about.
Spot you're getting full,
Yeah.
Then I'll be like with the alien videos almost.
Yeah. Well, those 14-year-old boys were at the very least will be fed. Your fans will be fed information that's actually substantive rather than.
I really try, and I feel even though I don't have that many followers, I already find it's a big duty for me to do, because I have young kids following me, and I have people that do already say they're inspired by me, and young kids that can't vote look at my content, and of course, like I still want to show who I am. That's why I still post like of my private life a little bit and try to show, I'm also this person. I'm not just the picture perfect politician young that only does debates and only wears suits. And I mean, no, I'm also this girl that can do this and that. I mean, there's different aspects to me. And of course I try to push forward about, about sustainability, about like what I do behind the scenes. I did that meeting with the office yesterday, like founder. I wish I did a bit more content because I get so many great I get so great knowledge from these people that are too busy to do some content. And of course, I want to show that to young people.
Yeah.
All these little small lessons that I get. But I was like at this office, and then he had a big DJ booth in the middle of his office. And I posted a video about, look at this DJ booth. Would you have a DJ booth in your office? Make it interactive. So many people messaged, and make it a bit interactive as well, because
give people a chance to give their opinions.
Yeah,
actually express themselves.
Yeah, during elections I often ask people their opinions on some policy cases, and when I study, I love to interact with the voters, with the politicians, and with the business people to kind of see, what could be done better. So that's the good aspects of social media. But as you say, it's a big role you take upon yourself if you show yourself as and I think these influencers, some do a good job. Like I have some influencers, they post an extravagant lifestyle because they've made a lot of money, but at the same time they're like, law of attraction, believe it, you can do it, believe in yourself. I was a nobody, now I'm somebody. And I think that's great. At least they bring in this positivity to the table. But I mean, these like supermodels that completely modify their bodies and themselves and say they're models. And I mean,
a lot of people feel shame when they see those kinds of people because they look at their own bodies and they're like,
they might not even realize. But of course, that is that fine line. And I remember I met this banker, and his daughter follows me, and she's 9 years old. And he's worried about the aspects of social media on her because she already wants to, wear makeup, and she's this and that. And then he said that she used his Instagram and started following me and looking on, and she really liked what I was doing. And now she's like, oh, I want to be this academic because she's like academic and she's cool and she can wear a dress and all these things. And he had a few drinks and he was crying, and he was like, I'm so happy that like my daughter actually follows you and you've changed the way she wants to do some things. And I was so shocked. I'm like, wow, really, just by...
That's incredible.
And and he was like, I really hope more people be like you, showing that, because these models live such an amazing lifestyle that, of course, as a young girl, like I'd rather want to be that.
They look like they live amazing lifestyles.
I know, but like, looking at that, you're like, I'd rather be that than these boring people that talk about some like bureaucratic laws. I mean, I'm not a preacher for being a politician at all. Like, I mean,
no,
being
but
an
for thinking
entrepreneur,
substantively and caring and being passionate and having some sense of civic duty, those are all things that I think that you can influence people into doing without encouraging them to become politicians.
So I try to show, like, I mean, running a small company and going to conferences and doing these things can be quite cool, can be quite like fun as well, innovative, sexy. It can also be very hard. And I did post when I had some hard moments. I got very sick at one point after elections. I was hospitalized. I had like a health issue, and I was gone for a month from social media. And I posted afterwards a photo, like being like at a retreat now. Some things. I mean, I had a sacrifice. All these things didn't come easy for me. But I got back, and some people were like, "Oh, you're on a holiday, or are you this, or what? Were you gone, and what happened?" And I was like,
I was in the hospital.
But I didn't want to promote it too much because it's very personal. But at the same time, I actually dared to say that, something happened. And that's life. Something can happen.
I hope you're able to remain sincere. I know being a politician sometimes you can be limited about being too, unfiltered. And I think that just comes with the territory.
Yeah.
It seems like you've been able to remain grounded and sincere, and I hope that continues. I would love to keep talking to you. I have to run to the airport.
Yeah.
Let's maybe check in like a year or two and see if we can do this again. But thank you for sitting down. I think this is a really fun interview.
Definitely. Thank you for inviting. It's always great to meet people. Like, I was in Denmark yesterday. Today I'm lucky enough to be able to be in London and catch up with cool people. So it's great.